before you make any decision about what you're doing in your relationship is really make sure that you're understanding exactly what you're walking away from. And that's not talking necessarily just about the relationship itself, but it's actually talking about the overall situation that you're actually in.
Welcome to Divorce Down Under, the Aussie way, where a regular guy like me, Matt, will help you navigate a fresh start following a divorce. After experiencing a divorce and going through all sorts of emotions, I hope to bring you the right tools and advice so you can set up a better life after divorce. Hear from experts and people like you who have lived it, sharing insights so you may find peace in a new beginning. Bianca to Divorce Down Under. It's a pleasure to have you on as a guest. I actually appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule. I know we had a bit of a chat about both being busy and having enough on. So again, thanks for joining us on the show.
You're so welcome, Matt. I'm really, really pleased to be here.
So what I wanted to do is, for any of the viewers out there that don't know who you are, I thought I'd basically leave it over to you to explain a little bit about yourself.
Sure.
I guess for all the viewers, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and, where you're from and what you're doing currently?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Bianca and I have been a financial advisor for the best part of 2 decades. And having been the privilege of being in people's lives as significantly as that, back in 2015-16, I saw a real opening in the market to help people get through their divorces from a financial perspective. So whilst I was in my wealth management business, I was spending a lot of time with clients doing almost collaborative law with lawyers and, also accountants and other professional services and also personal services, which led to the business that I've now got now, which is called Your Worth and also Legally Yours. So essentially they're social enterprises. They're all about getting access to justice, also helping people through divorce, and, very much purpose-led projects that we've got on the go. And it's obviously, a great honour to be here having a conversation with you up in sunny Queensland, although as I'm sure you can attest, it's not very sunny at the moment. So, I moved from Melbourne, having spent considerable time down in Victoria back in December of last year. And I feel like since I've moved here, I bought all of the bad weather and they're now having beautiful sunny days at 20 degrees and we've got quite the opposite.
You're right about the weather. It's been for anyone that doesn't know, this week it's just been rain day after day. We've had close to 100 mil in some areas, so yeah, it has been a bit wet. But actually, the sun has peaked out today, so that's a nice change. Yeah, we are lucky most of the time on the sunny coast. But I was gonna ask you a question. So I'm going to ask you a question and tell us something about you that we don't know. And I was talking to you and telling you something the audience don't know about myself. And I thought I'd tell the audience what we discussed. And I'll start with, something about me that they might not know. I've got a bit of a claim to fame. And 10 years ago, I was lucky enough to sell the domain name crowdfunding.com to Brad and Andy from GoFundMe. And I was lucky enough to fly out there and join them and contract agreement together and meet them. And then they sold their company for, I think, $500 million. But Bianca, can you tell us something about yourself that we don't know?
Well, I can assure you that mine is nowhere near that significant, but my claim to fame, or it's not even really a claim to fame, it's definitely something that people always go, really? Is that someone asked me this morning, what's your favourite genre of music? And I said, country and western, and they nearly fell off their chair. I don't know, maybe I just don't look like a country and western fan, but I am definitely a country and western fan, and most days you'll hear it through my house before anything else.
I like it. It's a kind of music you can actually work to.
It is. Yeah. It is indeed.
Okay, let's dive in. So I think some of the things we talked about when we met prior to actually meeting today is you come across as someone that's got some really great ideas around mastering divorce pre-divorce, and prepping yourself and simplifying, the process of divorce itself. And I think in having gone through a separation myself, things don't seem simple. And I think you had some really great ideas, and I'd really like to uncover some of those a little bit more. Like anything in life, it's important to take the time to prepare and strategize a plan for whatever it is you're trying to achieve. And with divorce being such an emotional roller coaster, I believe it is even more important to be prepared.
Indeed.
Having dealt with so many cases yourself, can you tell the audience why you believe it's important to be prepared?
Yeah, of course. So I liken it to, we don't just get into our cars without our keys. We can't drive down the street if we haven't had a process to get there in order to be able to get to whatever the destination is. And time and time and time again, especially in the early years when I was spending a lot of time doing this sort of stuff, um, I would normally get the client at a point where, they'd already separated, and unfortunately, it was already a mess. So I've spent, the best part of it, almost a decade now, trying to educate people around, before you make any decision about what you're doing in your relationship, de facto relationship or marriage or whatever it may be, is really make sure that you're understanding exactly what you're walking away from. And that's not talking necessarily just about the relationship itself, but it's actually talking about the overall situation that you're actually in. So, I think I was saying to you the other day that, there's this case that's come across, or the matter that's come across my desk just in recent times, where, lots and lots of money, husband and wife have, essentially played very traditional roles in their marriage. The wife has looked after the children and the home and so on and so forth, and the husband's gone out and, earned the money and created businesses and so on and so forth. But as we all know, or for those who don't know, with that also comes particular situations that sometimes we get ourselves involved in that we're actually not even sure that we're involved in. So,
Yeah.
I've had this client come to me and essentially they've said, well, I don't know. I don't know if I'm on companies. I don't know where my super is. I don't know how many bank accounts I'm on. I don't know who owns the houses. I don't know who owns the cars. In fact, I actually don't know anything. So the point of what I'm trying to make is that ultimately having the ability to be able to say, we make decisions that we're out of a relationship not within a day, but it is normally quite a considerable amount of time before we actually decide to pull the pin and walk away. So if you're having those feelings of, I don't think that this is right for me. I mean, domestic violence situations, granted, are very, very
Yeah.
different. But if you're sort of at a point where you're like, this doesn't feel right for me anymore. I'm not sure where this is going. I don't know whether, what path that this is going to take. That's the opportunity for you to really be making headway into making sure you understand, what are your assets and liabilities? What have you got your name to? Are you a trustee on companies? Are you a director on companies? Are you a shareholder? What do I own? What's in my name? What's not in my name? What's the income? What's our expenses look like? All of that sort of stuff before you actually get to the place of, okay, it's actually now time to leave. Because once you know what that actually looks like, you can actually create a plan that ensures that when you do leave, you're feeling a lot more empowered about the decision that you're making rather than disempowered, because all of a sudden you've now walked away, there's a Chinese wall and you can't get any information whatsoever. As I said, domestic violence situations are obviously incredibly different to what I'm talking about in the mainstream perspective. But even in domestic violence situations, we also see that it's very important to have some understanding of what the overall situation looks like.
Yeah, I agree, and that's what I like about Legally Yours. You can sort of point people in the direction of many directions, and you have a good understanding of their certain circumstances. And correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm saying this wrong, but you have access to all sorts of lawyers. Is that
Yes,
correct?
Yeah, so we've got a plethora of lawyers nationwide um, that look after all different areas of law. And then my other business, which is called Your Worth, essentially what we do there is, we have clients that come into us. They essentially share their shame story with us about whatever it might be that's happening in their world. We do look after a lot of clients that are hopefully pre-divorce rather than post. But we also look after widows and, people who are really going through a really tough time or they need some guidance or direction, or even some that aren't going through a tough time but just are not sure what their next step in life is. And so then the platform allows us to be able to share that story and then really be able to build out a roadmap so that they can get through whatever it is that they're going through in life. And that might be that we're drawing on, legally yours to pull in the lawyers. But then we're also drawing on other professional services as well. So we might need a financial advisor, we might need an accountant, we might need a mortgage broker. But then we're also, pulling on things like if there's children involved and, there seems to be some behavioural changes that are happening because they can sense that there is a divide that's happening in the relationship. Then we've got the ability to be able to draw on counsellors and psychologists and so on and so forth. So I've spent, yeah, like I said, essentially a decade talking to people from all different walks of life in professional and personal services that allows us to be able to draw on those to make sure that through what is an incredibly difficult time in everybody's life. It doesn't matter whether you're the one that left or you're the one that was left behind. It is an incredible difficult time. And then if you add children to the mix, that's just even more so compounding.
Yeah, that actually leads me to the next question, which was, and you actually raised some really good points, and everyone likes a tip, and I think there was plenty of really good ideas in there, and I think you raised a point about not knowing where everything is and what company and what asset, and that's where you can introduce, what they call as a forensic accountant, and they have that skill set and ability to be able to go in there, because I think what people don't necessarily understand. Once you officially get a divorce and you've signed anything off and you've said that's it, there's after a certain amount of time, there's no going back and getting a second bite at the cherry, so to speak. So it's sort of really important that you are prepared in that regard. So you raise some good points and some ideas for people that if they're not sure, especially with finances and where things are, they have people that are called forensics accountants as an example.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think to that point as well, Matt, um, we're seeing a huge number of women who are sitting in their 55 to 60-year-olds who were predominantly the caretaker of the children. They have, they've separated. They have accepted a settlement, which at the time probably felt very fair and reasonable to them. However, for whatever reason and whatever journey they've been on in their life, they either haven't been able to get back into the workforce or whatever it may be. We're seeing a lot of those women actually now homeless. And there's a really, really, really big rise in this. And our conversation today is not about making sure someone wins the lotto by
Right.
going out and getting a divorce or separating for their partner, but it's just about having an equitable split
Yes.
of whatever the contribution is, whether it's financial or non-financial, and really considering about what is the here and the now, and especially if the children are young and the plan was always for mum to stay at home or even dad to stay at home. Like, I mean, we've got all different changes of dynamics in families these days.
Yeah.
Is just to really understand what is it now and what does the future really look like. And one of the things that I think happens a lot is that we become quite complacent to the here and the now, and we don't really focus on what the future looks like. So I've had another client of mine, and sadly it was very litigious and it went for 12 years. And ultimately, at the end of the 12 years, yeah, she was paid a settlement amount. But because she had been um, um, for want of a better term, kept in a certain lifestyle during that time, and um, didn't wasn't focused on what the future was, and um, getting gainful employment or even seeking education to get gainful employment. That settlement lasted, I'm going to say, maybe 3 years, all gone.
Yeah. Yeah. It goes up in smoke just because it took that long.
But that comes back to, because those traditional roles of, you know, she was at home with the children, he went out and worked. There was, they obviously fought this battle for 12 years. Finally, it was all over and the settlement was done, but the work hadn't happened to, okay, well, once I get that settlement, and of course, I picked up the client when it was at the end of, oh no, what have I done? All
Yeah.
I've now got is a superannuation policy and I've got no money left in the bank. Had we have got to them earlier, we would have been having the conversation around, well, yes, you're going to get there's going to be a settlement. That's there to make sure that you can put a roof over the kids' heads, and clothes on their back and food in their belly and all of that sort of stuff. But what does life look like for you post all of this? How do you find your purpose? How do you find the way that you're going to continue your life for yourself, for your children, and also for your community as well? So it's divorce or separation. Let's just call it separation, because it doesn't really matter whether you're married or not.
Agree.
There are so many elements that you have to be really, really thinking about before you actually hit that. Yeah, the ejection button of I'm out of here. And one of the other things that I'm very, very mindful of is also making sure you've got the right people around you when you start to, when you start the process. Because, and I know it sounds like I'm talking about all the negatives, but I think sometimes talking about the negatives is where you actually leverage from what not to do.
Yeah.
Through the whole process is the amount of times I've said to, clients, please don't talk to your next door neighbour. Please don't talk to your best friend whose husband or wife happens to be the best friend of the other person or whatever. Everything just goes pear-shaped and up in smoke, because they feel like they need to be loyal to the other side, and so on and so forth. So having really good trusted advisors, sometimes even ones that you pay, that you can vent and have those conversations with, versus your community that you once had with your partner, is incredibly important.
I agree, and I think it keeps you in a good headspace too. If you talking to people and being negative to friends and family, it only keeps you in that negative headspace. And I think, whether it's prior, going through one, or at the end of it, I think it just needs to be in that sort of positive sort of mindset. And then you reply and respond in that positive mindset, and your actions are also positive. So yeah, really good points you've raised there, Bianca.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that we do at Your Worth, is that we do a lot of hand holding, and we really try and help make non-emotional decisions, because when emotion is involved, which of course it is, I mean,
Yeah,
it's a horrendous thing to go
yeah,
through. But if we can try and keep emotion out of the decisions, the choices, the written word, the verbal, then, even though sometimes you really have to step into a place of being the bigger person, the end result for that is a lot more peaceful. And, we really try and do our best to make sure whoever is going through it comes out and remain somewhat whole,
yeah,
because I mean, you and I both know, Matt, it's very easy to get torn apart when you're going through and when kids are involved as
yeah,
well. I think sometimes there's almost these little forgotten souls
yeah,
that are there, and I would say to your audience as well is, don't forget about the kids. The kids pick up on energy. They already know when something is happening. Sometimes, yes, you have to wait until the fact that it's happened and you're moving out, and we're separating houses, and your children have now got two houses to go to, or two homes to go to rather than one. But I think it's really, really important at whatever age level your children are to be sitting down and having really clear and concise conversations with them, so that they know that they are, regardless of whether they've gone from one home to two, that they are safe and they are secure, and that mum and dad love them, or mum and mum, or dad, or whoever it might be, that they absolutely love them. They are still safe, they are still secure. Yes, change is happening, but you can work through it as a family and as a unit together to make sure that those little beings, because even at 18, they're still little beings,
Yeah.
and they get very, very affected still by, mum and dad separating, and, 'cause that's been their world. That's
Yeah.
all they've ever known for such a long period of time, until they're out on their own and they're doing their own things and creating their own lives.
Yeah, agree, 100%. And I actually found I used a tool called the Happy Parenting app, and it's a
Yeah.
science. It's I think it was in the UK or the US, and it's science backed and it's free actually, but it's an excellent app. And it's actually a tool I actually use with my daughter now, and she's understanding about how the chemicals work in the brain, the negative, the cortisol, all that sort of stuff. And she jokes and comes home and dad says, "Daddy, I think someone had high cortisol levels today because they were very grumpy." And it's there's
Oh,
within
how
reason.
beautiful.
Yes, it is actually beautiful. And there's also another
Yeah.
one. It's called the Triple P Parenting, which is free as well. And they're great tools for some of the things you talked about. Yeah, because I think it's one thing we don't focus on enough. We're all good about going to work and learning our marketing and skills in this and skills in that, but we forget about ourselves, our own mental health, and in
Yeah.
marriages. And I'm big on that. I wasn't prior, but I'm learning more so how important it is to focus more back on myself and my kids. And they're example of some really good tools that I found personally helped.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we bring in that, with your worth, and why we bring in that personal service, not just the professional service, because the professional is so clinical, right? At
Yeah,
the end of the day, assets are assets, liabilities are liabilities, income's income, you know, tax is tax, da da
yeah,
da da da. But we do genuinely, yeah, exactly, tax is tax. But we forget about, like, how am I feeling? Like,
yeah,
how is this affecting me? How is my emotional state? How's my mental state? How's my spiritual state as
yeah,
well? And so we really try and, this is all the non-emotional stuff over here, very factual, very easy to deal with. This stuff over here, though, is incredibly complex, and having the ability to be able to bring in services that can actually help through that. And even, as you say, using free apps and bits and pieces to help people understand, how does the soul work? How does the brain work? How does, your body work when it's reacting to almost fear and danger based
yeah,
situations, which divorce is that, separation is that. It's a very fear based, because you're stepping into this complete unknown.
yeah, yeah. I agree. And another thing is that I was told once is there's so many things you get stressed about and worried about, and you talk about the negative things before. And I think it's a good point that don't worry about the things you don't have control of. They're there and they're being dealt with, or they're being managed by someone else. If you've got support, focus on. And it's a good reminder, stop worrying about those things I have no control of and focus on the things you do have control of, which is what you were talking about there, the different things, the facts. And you can't control your tax. It is what it is. Don't worry about it. Yeah,
Yeah, but that comes back to preparation as well, though, Matt.
exactly. Yeah, 100%.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, if you're prepped and you know what your overall situation looks like, not just that you are the person who goes out to work and earn the money, or you are the primary person that looks after your children, but if you know everything that happens in your surroundings in regards to that entity, or that relationship that you've been having, then you are far more in control of
Yeah,
having an understanding of what your rights are, what your responsibilities are. And not only that, but when you go and speak to a lawyer, um, So many people are so incredibly scared of that L word, and it's not love, it's lawyer, because they just get this huge sense of anxiety around, oh, how much is it going to cost? And, what's the other side going to look like? Like, are they going to be, rough and tough on me and beat me up and da 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 da? And at Legally Yours, we obviously spend a lot of time sort of humanising the lawyer so that so that consumers that come through the Legally Yours platform feel really comfortable about knowing who they're engaging with, and feel like they can actually build a relationship, because
Yeah,
going through divorce doesn't happen in, it's not a click and flick situation. It is a relationship that you are genuinely building with a professional service provider to get you through a very, very tough time. And the thing is, they're not counselors, they're lawyers.
yeah,
So they are always going to stick to the facts. They are always going to be what is fair, reasonable, and equitable. And, you know, for us, being prepared and making sure that you're going to the lawyer with almost, right, here it all is in a package with a nice bow on it. You've got everything. Lawyers love that,
yeah,
because they can actually just do their jobs.
yeah,
And their job is to get you through this really, really pinnacle point in your life.
yeah. And that comes back to being prepared too, because you want the lawyer that is not going to have that more litigious mindset. You want the one that actually will be there and show you how to get through it the quickest way possible if you're worried about money. They are out there, and
Correct.
that's a good thing about your platform. You kind of can filter out sort of the right people for the whatever it is they're going through. Um, I,
Yeah.
I was going to say, can we? You've got a new tool in production. Is it too early to be talking about that,
Well, um,
or should we wait
watch
until
this
next
space.
time?
Do you know what? Let's do that next time. Let's definitely catch up and talk about it, because I think that there'll be there's two platforms that we're working on. One's existing and it's an integration, and then the other one's brand new. So I think let's definitely catch up and talk about those at another time. But I think the reality is that, you know, like we've been talking about, it is quite genuine, all about the preparation, having the right people around you. And the other thing that I do just want to hit on, Matt, and it's something that a lot of people don't think about, is having a freedom fund. I call it a freedom fund, because it is a fund that you need, that unfortunately, if you do need to leave the marital home, or your home for whatever reason, and it needs to either happen quickly or slowly, that you've actually got funds to put a roof over your head for a period of time. You've got funds to be able to go and see a lawyer if you need to. You've got funds to be able to continue to put food in your belly. Because really, when you're going through this stuff, it is really just about the essentials until it's all finalised and you can actually move on with your life. But yeah, really, and I call it the Freedom Fund, and I talk to all of my clients about it. And that amount can be anything, and that just really comes back to what your situation is financially. But having that money in your back pocket and just knowing that you've got a bit of a safety buffer to be able to do the things that you need to do, is incredibly, incredibly important, just as much as being prepared.
Yeah, I agree. Because when you're in a partnership, they're double incomes, and then you're on your own. You can in some cases have very similar expenses, but they're on your own now. So I think you're right. It's important to, and that comes to back to your whole idea around being prepared. It's having that preparation, and then you don't have that stress or that thinking because you've prepared. And there's some simple steps you can take. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to hold you up
Absolutely.
anymore. I really want to thank you for your time. I've got so many more questions, but I think we'll go on for another hour, but I don't want to do that to you. um, and I'd love to have you on again as a guest if you find the time. And what we'll do is we'll share we'll share those, some of those sites you talked about in the show notes. If anyone wants to get in contact with Bianca, we'll leave some details there where they can reach out to you. And I guess I'll leave it over to you if you want to say one last thing.
Look, I think we've really spoken about it, Matt. Other than, thank you so much for having me on the show. I am so passionate and about what we're creating across all of our, I call it the omni ecosystem that we're building out with both myself and my business partners. And, you know, we are very much about social enterprise. We are very much about people getting access to those professionals that they need, regardless of what it is that they're going through. And, you know, very much, you know, the Your Worth project that we're doing is genuinely why I think I was put on this earth. So it's very purpose led for me, and I would be very, very, very happy to engage with any of your audience and see if we can help them maybe transition through some tough times in their life.
We'll get you on next time and you can share all those gold nuggets you got coming to us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm going to let you go, but thank you so much for joining us, and we'll get you on board soon again. And in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks, Matt. You as well.
Thanks, Bianca. Thank you for listening to Divorce Down Under, the Aussie way, helping you navigate a fresh start after divorce. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please leave a review from wherever you are watching or listening, and don't forget to share this with your friends. Also, let us know what you want to hear in future episodes. See you next time for a new episode of Divorce Down Under.